Do these pants make me look fat? That question has destroyed more relationships than cheating. And do you know why? Because no matter what you answer, you've already lost. If you say no, she knows you're lying. If you hesitate for a second, you've confirmed it's yes. If you try to change the subject, you make everything worse. This is the perfect trap, and every man who's ever been in a relationship has fallen into it at least once. But the problem goes far beyond questions about clothing. There's a game being played in relationships that nobody explained the rules of. A game where the truth is the worst move you can make. Where being honest is considered cruel, insensitive, even abusive. And where lying becomes not only acceptable, but expected, encouraged, practically mandatory. Think about the last time you were completely honest with a woman. What happened afterward? Crying. Silence. Slamming doors. Cutting messages. That look of disappointment that cuts deeper than any knife. And then comes the line every man has heard, "I can't believe you said that." As if the truth were the crime, not the question that forced you to say it. Society has taught us since childhood that men must protect women's feelings. That we are too rough, too insensitive, too rational. That our honesty is a character flaw, not a virtue. We grew up hearing that we need to be more delicate, more understanding, more careful with our words. But no one ever said that this meant giving up our integrity. When a boy at school says he doesn't want to play with a certain girl, he's called mean. When a teenager rejects an invitation to go out, he's insensitive. When an adult expresses an honest opinion about his partner's appearance, he's cruel. The message is clear and repeated throughout life. Your truth hurts, so learn to lie. And we learned. We learned very well. Do you still think I'm pretty? Of course, honey. Is my friend attractive? I didn't even notice her. Do you regret marrying me? Never, you're everything to me. Lie after lie, building a relationship on a foundation of falsehood. And when everything collapses, we wonder why there is no real intimacy, why we feel distant, why it feels like we're living with a stranger. The answer is simple and painful. You cannot have true intimacy without truth. Period. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. Those trap questions aren't asked by accident. They aren't innocent. They serve a very specific purpose, to test how far you're willing to sacrifice your honesty to keep the peace. It's a submission test disguised as a search for validation. And every time you pass that test by lying, you lose a piece of your integrity. The pattern repeats in all relationships. The woman asks a question that has no right answer. The man tries to be honest. The woman reacts with intense emotion. The man retreats, apologizes, tries to fix it, and learns that next time, it's easier to simply lie. This cycle happens so many times that eventually the man doesn't even need to think anymore. The lie becomes automatic, a reflex of emotional survival. Happy wife, happy life. That phrase perfectly sums up the problem. It's not honest wife, honest life, or truthful wife, truthful life. It's literally an instruction manual for giving up your truth in the name of her convenience. And society applauds this as if it were wisdom, when in fact it's the perfect recipe for creating spineless men and shallow relationships. The most disturbing thing is that this behavior is reinforced by everyone around you. Married friends give you advice on how to keep the peace. Parents tell you to pick your battles. Therapists suggest nonviolent communication, which often means hiding uncomfortable truths behind softened language. Everyone conspires to teach you that your honesty is the problem, not her inability to deal with reality. And so men become professional liars. They lie about attraction. They lie about feelings. They lie about the past. They lie about the present. They lie about future plans. They build entire castles of falsehood, brick by brick, lie by lie, until one day they wake up and don't recognize who they've become. The question isn't whether women deserve kindness and consideration. Of course they do. The question is, at what cost? When kindness requires dishonesty, when consideration requires falsehood, when keeping the peace requires betraying yourself, something is deeply wrong. If you're following this content and realizing you've already lived through these situations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What comes next will completely change your perspective on relationships. But before understanding how to get out of this trap, we need to go deeper. We need to understand where this pattern comes from, why it's so powerful, and why so many intelligent, capable men keep falling into it repeatedly. Because it's not just about a few inconvenient questions. It's about a power dynamic that's at the root of almost every conflict between men and women. And once you see this pattern clearly, you can't stop seeing it everywhere. Emotional terrorism has an operations manual. And every woman learns this manual without ever reading a single page. It's passed down from mother to daughter, from friend to friend, through movies, magazines, social media. An ancestral knowledge of how to control men using the most powerful weapon that exists, emotion. Here's how it works. When you say something honest that she doesn't want to hear, the reaction isn't rational. It's not a logical discussion about the merit of your statement. It's an emotional explosion carefully calibrated to make you back down. Crying. Accusations of insensitivity. Comparisons to ex-boyfriends who were more attentive. The silent treatment that lasts for days. Each tactic designed to punish you for daring to be authentic. And here's the genius trick, she's not doing this consciously. She's not a calculating villain plotting your destruction. It's a learned behavior so deep that it feels instinctive. She truly believes she's being honest about her feelings, that you really hurt her, that your truth was a personal attack. She is simultaneously the perpetrator and the victim of her own manipulation. Let's dissect a classic situation. You're at dinner, and she asks, "What did you think of that woman who just walked by?" If you say you didn't notice, she insists, "What do you mean you didn't notice? She was right in front of you." If you admit you saw her, she asks, "So did you think she was pretty?" Now you're cornered. Any answer confirms that you were looking at another woman, and that's already the crime. The truth is she doesn't want to know what you thought of the woman. She wants to confirm that you're still willing to deny reality to protect her feelings. She wants to check if you're still trained, still obedient, still submissive to the emotional game. And if you fail the test, if you dare to say yes, she was attractive, prepare to pay the price over the next hours, days, maybe weeks. But let's talk about something no one mentions, the psychological cost for the man who lives in this system. Every lie corrodes a piece of your self-image. Every time you betray your own perception of reality to please someone else, you lose trust in yourself. You start to doubt your own judgment. Are you really being insensitive? Is your truth really cruel? Are you the problem? This constant doubt creates something devastating: men who don't trust their own minds. Men who check every word 3 times before speaking. Men who develop anxiety around simple conversations because they never know when they'll step on an emotional landmine. Men who become shadows of themselves, ghosts walking through relationships where they can't be authentic. And the most tragic part? It destroys exactly what women claim they want. They say they want a confident man, secure in himself, with his own opinions. But then they systematically punish every display of those qualities. They want the tiger in the street and the kitten at home. They want masculine strength, but controlled, domesticated, directed only where they allow it. Here's an inconvenient truth: relationships built on lies don't survive. They can last for years, even decades, but they're not alive. They're emotional zombies, bodies without souls, routines without connection. The man goes to work, comes home, says the expected lies, and sleeps next to a stranger he supposedly loves. And he wonders why he feels so empty, so disconnected, so lost. The irony is that women also suffer in this system. They never receive honest feedback about anything. They live in bubbles of artificial validation where everyone agrees they're always right, always beautiful, always justified. They don't grow. They don't evolve. They don't develop the emotional resilience needed to navigate reality. They remain eternally fragile, eternally dependent on comforting lies to keep their self-image intact. This creates a vicious cycle. The more the man lies, the more she depends on those lies. The more she depends on them, the more emotionally fragile she becomes. The more fragile she gets, the more he has to lie to avoid crises. And so both sink together into a relationship where authenticity died long ago, but no one had the courage to admit it. Think about your parents, your grandparents, the couples you've known for decades. How many of them truly know each other? How many can have honest conversations about attraction, regrets, fears, unfulfilled desires? Almost none. Most are trapped in a rehearsed dance where everyone knows the steps, but no one remembers why they started dancing. And maybe the scariest part is this: you're probably defending this system in your mind right now. Thinking of exceptions, of nuances, of how your situation is different. That's the conditioning at work. That's how deeply you've been trained to protect women, even from observations about female behavioral patterns. Even your ability to objectively analyze the situation has been compromised. So when does all of this collapse? When does the facade finally fall? It usually happens in two ways. The first is slow, like poison working through the system. One day the man wakes up and realizes he no longer recognizes himself. He looks in the mirror and sees a stranger. Someone who agrees with everything, who never disagrees, who has completely lost the ability to stand up for his own opinions. He's become exactly what he swore he'd never be, an emotional puppet. The second way is explosive. After years of swallowing truths, holding back opinions, biting his tongue, something snaps. A simple question, maybe the 1,000th time she's asked if she looks fat, and suddenly all the accumulated lies want to come out at once. And when they do, everything comes out together. Years of repressed frustration, denied authenticity, sacrificed integrity. And the relationship implodes within minutes. Here's what no one tells you about that moment. It doesn't matter which of the two ways it happens, you'll be the villain. If you slowly disappear into silent depression, you'll be accused of being distant, of not communicating, of having given up on the relationship. If you explode with years of repressed truth, you'll be called abusive, aggressive, unstable. There's no right way to wake up from this illusion without being punished for it. And women genuinely believe they're the victims in this story. They look at the depressed man and think, why doesn't he talk to me? Without realizing they spent years training him not to. They look at the man who exploded and think, where did that come from? Without connecting it to the 1,000 times they punished every attempt he made to be honest. The lack of self-awareness is astonishing. But there's something even deeper happening here. This pattern doesn't just affect romantic relationships. It contaminates everything. Workplaces where you can't give honest feedback to female colleagues without being accused of harassment. Friendships where you have to validate obviously bad decisions to avoid being cut off socially. Families where differing opinions are treated as betrayal. The virus of mandatory dishonesty has spread throughout society. Look at what happens to public men who dare to speak uncomfortable truths about differences between men and women. Immediate cancellation. Job loss. Reputation destruction campaigns. It doesn't matter if what they said is statistically provable, biologically grounded, or simply observable to any honest person. Truth has become heresy, and those who speak it must be burned at the digital stake. This creates a generation of terrified men. Men who prefer to stay silent rather than risk their careers, their relationships, their peace. Men who've learned that authenticity is dangerous, that honesty is a luxury they can't afford, that truth is a privilege reserved only for those willing to lose everything. And here's the part that will make you angry. The same women who punish men for being honest also complain they can't find real men. They want authenticity, yet punish every sign of it. They want vulnerability, yet use every moment of openness as ammunition in future fights. They want emotionally available partners, yet make it emotionally dangerous to be available. It's a perfect prison. You can't be honest without being punished. You can't lie without losing your integrity. You can't stay silent without being accused of not communicating. You can't leave without being destroyed financially and socially. Every door is locked. Every exit blocked. And there you are, trapped in a relationship that should be a source of joy but has become an emotional minefield. The most devastating part? There are men defending this system. Men who've been so thoroughly conditioned that they now train other men to submit. They call it emotional maturity or emotional intelligence. They teach communication techniques that are basically manuals on how to lie more skillfully. They sell courses on understanding women that should really be called How to Betray Yourself More Efficiently. And the consequences go far beyond unhappy relationships. Male suicide rates skyrocketing. Male depression at record highs. Young men abandoning the idea of serious relationships altogether. An entire generation of men looking at their fathers, seeing lives of silent despair, and deciding it's not worth it. They prefer loneliness to emotional imprisonment disguised as partnership. But here's the central question that must be faced directly. How long will you keep sacrificing your truth on the altar of someone else's emotional comfort? How long will you keep betraying who you are to maintain a peace that isn't even real? How long will you keep pretending all of this is normal, acceptable, just how relationships work? The way out exists. But it's not easy, not comfortable, and it certainly won't be applauded by most people around you. First, you need to make a fundamental decision. Your integrity is worth more than her approval. This isn't a decision you make once, and that's it. It's a decision you need to reaffirm every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Every time a trap question arises, every time you feel the pressure to lie, you choose again. Truth or convenience. Integrity or temporary peace. When she asks if she's fat, you answer with gentle but firm honesty. Yes, you've gained some weight. We all do sometimes. What can we do about it? It's not cruel. It's not insensitive. It's real. And if she reacts emotionally, you don't back down. You maintain your position calmly. You asked me, and I answered honestly because I respect you too much to lie. The first time you do this, it will be an earthquake. She will test every limit. Heightened crying. Heavier accusations. Maybe even threats to end the relationship. This is expected. You're changing the rules of a game she's been winning for years. Of course, there will be resistance. But here's the secret: you cannot be afraid of losing the relationship. If the relationship only exists based on lies, it's already lost anyway. And something interesting happens when you consistently hold your ground. One of two things will occur. Either she will adapt and grow, developing the ability to handle uncomfortable truths, and the relationship will become deeper and more authentic than ever. Or she will leave, and you will discover that you lost someone who never truly valued you beyond your utility as an emotional validator. Both outcomes are victories. In the first case, you have a real relationship. In the second, you regain your freedom and integrity. There is no scenario where continuing to lie makes things better. That option simply doesn't exist on the menu of possibilities. But there's something crucial that needs to be understood. This isn't about being harsh, insensitive, or cruel. It's about establishing that you will no longer betray reality to protect illusions. You can be honest and still be kind. You can tell difficult truths without being brutal. You can maintain your integrity without being an asshole. The difference is in the intention. You're not telling the truth to hurt her. You're telling it because you believe she is strong enough to handle reality. You're telling it because you respect her too much to treat her like a child who needs protection from basic facts. You're telling it because truth is the only foundation on which something real can be built. And here's the lesson that changes everything. Relationships aren't about making the other person happy. Relationships are about two people facing reality together, honest about who they are, what they want, and where they are failing. Happiness is an occasional byproduct of that honesty, not the primary goal. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop walking on eggshells. You stop calculating every word. You stop living in fear of the next emotional test. You simply exist as you are, speak your truth when asked, and let the consequences be what they will. This isn't arrogance. It's peace. The peace that comes from knowing you're not betraying yourself in every conversation. For younger men listening to this, don't learn the destructive habits of the previous generation. Don't accept that lying is a normal part of relationships. Establish from the start that you value truth over comfort. Be the standard you seek in a partner, someone strong enough to handle reality, not someone who needs constant lies to function. For men already trapped in the pattern, it's never too late to reclaim your integrity. Yes, it will be hard. Yes, there will be consequences. But living another 30 years as a ghost of yourself is a far worse consequence. Start today. Next trap question, answer honestly. And keep answering honestly until it becomes your new nature. The truth frees. Not immediately. Not without pain. But eventually, inevitably, the truth frees. It frees you from constant anxiety. It frees you from the guilt of living a lie. It frees you to find someone who values your authenticity instead of punishing it. Or it frees you to be alone, which is still infinitely better than being trapped. They may go crazy when you tell the truth. Let them. It's not your responsibility to manage the emotions of adults. Your responsibility is to live with integrity. And if your integrity causes temporary madness in someone else, the problem is not with your integrity. If this content changed your perspective, subscribe to the channel for more reflections that challenge conventional thinking about relationships and life. Reclaim your truth. Reclaim your integrity. Reclaim your life.